Most people remember Rahab as the woman who hid the Israelite spies, but her story is far more shocking than many realize. She wasn't just a bystander in the fall of Jericho. She was a key player in God's divine plan. How did a Canaanite woman, an outsider, become part of the lineage of Jesus Christ? How did she go from a life of shame to being one of the greatest examples of faith in the Bible? Stay tuned as we uncover the incredible and unexpected story of Rahab. And if you love powerful Bible stories that reveal God's grace in amazing ways, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Jericho was a city of power, wealth, and corruption. Massive walls surrounded it, making it seem impenetrable. Inside, its people thrived under the rule of the Canaanite kings, worshiping false gods and indulging in every form of sin imaginable. And in the midst of it all lived a woman named Rahab. Rahab was no ordinary woman. She was a harlot. Her home was built into the city walls, and from there, she had seen and heard much. She knew the secrets of Jericho's elite, the movements of merchants and soldiers, and the fears that people tried to hide. But despite the wealth she may have accumulated from her work, Rahab was still an outcast in society. She was a woman used but never valued. People whispered about her. They sneered when she passed by. She was marked by her past, a woman known only for her shame. But deep in her heart, Rahab longed for something more. She had heard stories, whispers of a God unlike the idols of Jericho. Travelers spoke of the Israelites, a wandering people who had been miraculously freed from Egypt. Some claimed their God had split the sea for them, that he had brought down mighty nations, and that wherever they went, no army could stand against them. For years, she had dismissed the stories as rumors. But now, everything had changed. The Israelites were here. Word spread like wildfire through the city. The mighty army of Israel had camped just across the Jordan River. Jericho's people were terrified. The king of Jericho tried to reassure them, saying their walls would keep them safe, that their gods would protect them. But Rahab knew better. She had seen the fear in men's eyes. She had heard the truth hidden in their voices. This was not just another invading army. This was the army of the living God. And then, one night, two strangers appeared at her door. Rahab didn't know their names, but she knew exactly who they were, Israelite spies. She had a choice. She could turn them in, gaining favor with the king and securing her place in Jericho. Or she could take a leap of faith, betray her people, and side with the God of Israel. And in that moment, Rahab made the most dangerous decision of her life. The two men stood at Rahab's doorway, their eyes scanning the room, wary of a trap. They were Israelites, spies sent to gather information about Jericho before their people would attack. Anyone who harbored them risked execution. But Rahab had already made up her mind. She would not betray them. She quickly ushered them inside and shut the door behind them. Her heart pounded in her chest. If anyone saw them enter, she would be dead by morning. But something deep inside her told her that these men were different, that their God was different. And for the first time in her life, she was willing to risk everything for a future she couldn't yet see. No sooner had the men settled than a sharp knock echoed through her home. "Open up, Rahab." It was the king's soldiers. They had heard the spies were in the city, and they knew exactly where to look. Rahab's pulse quickened, but she didn't hesitate. In a hurried whisper, she told the men, "Go, hide on the roof and stay silent." The Israelite spies scrambled up the stairs as Rahab rushed to answer the door. She forced a calm expression and greeted the soldiers. "Where are the men who came to you tonight?" one of them demanded. Rahab's mind raced, but she stood firm. "Yes, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they were from. They left at dusk before the city gate closed. If you hurry, you might catch them." It was a lie, a dangerous one. If the soldiers searched her house, she would be executed on the spot. But to her relief, they believed her. Without another word, the men turned and rushed toward the city gate, determined to find the spies before they escaped. Rahab exhaled sharply and hurried up to the roof. There, hidden beneath bundles of drying flax, were the two men whose lives she had just saved. She crouched down beside them, her voice urgent yet steady. "I know that the Lord has given you this land," she confessed. "Everyone in Jericho is terrified of you. We have heard how your God parted the Red Sea and destroyed mighty kings. No one has the courage to fight you, because we know your God is the true God of heaven and earth." The spies listened intently. They had expected to find fear in Jericho, but not faith. And yet, here was a Canaanite woman, a harlot, declaring her belief in their God. Rahab then made a bold request. "Swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to me and my family. Since I have saved your lives, promise me that when you take this city, you will spare us." The men exchanged a glance. It was clear now, God had led them to this woman for a reason. "We swear it," one of them said. "When the Lord gives us this land, you and your family will be safe." But Rahab had one more question. How could they be sure the Israelites would keep their word? And it was then that the scarlet cord entered history. The city of Jericho trembled with fear. The people had heard the stories of Israel's God, the one who split the Red Sea, the one who rained down plagues on Egypt, the one who defeated mighty kings. And now, that same God had brought his people to their doorstep. The Israelites were camped just beyond the Jordan River, and their presence was an unshakable omen of doom. Rahab watched from her home built into Jericho's massive walls. She knew this city was living on borrowed time. But while the rest of Jericho's citizens cowered behind their thick defenses, she clung to something far greater than stone walls, a promise. The Israelite spies had sworn an oath to her. If she tied a scarlet cord to her window, she and her family would be spared when Jericho fell. It was a simple act, yet a profound symbol, red like the blood of a sacrifice, a sign of salvation amidst destruction. And so, with steady hands, Rahab tied the cord in place and gathered her family inside. Days passed. The city braced for war. Soldiers patrolled the walls, archers stood at the ready, and watchmen scanned the horizon. Then, on the seventh day, the Israelites came. But they did something no one expected. Instead of launching an attack, they marched. For 6 days, the army of Israel had circled Jericho in complete silence, save for the sound of trumpets blown by priests. No battering rams. No siege weapons. Just the steady, methodical march of warriors led by their God. The people of Jericho watched in confusion and terror. Some mocked. Some trembled. But Rahab knew this was no ordinary battle. On the seventh day, everything changed. The Israelites rose at dawn. This time, they marched around the city not once, but 7 times. The tension in Jericho was unbearable. Every footstep, every trumpet blast. It was as if the very air carried the weight of divine judgment. And then, as they completed the 7th lap, a single voice rang out. "Shout! For the Lord has given you the city." A deafening roar erupted from the Israelite camp. Their voices rose in unison, a battle cry from a people who knew their victory was already won. The trumpet sounded one last time, long, loud, unrelenting. And then, Jericho's mighty walls began to shake. The ground trembled as cracks split through the stone. The impossible happened. The walls, thick enough to house entire homes, strong enough to withstand any siege, crumbled like sand. Within moments, Jericho, the impenetrable fortress, was reduced to rubble. The Israelites charged. The city fell in chaos and fire, its people overwhelmed by the judgment of God. But in the midst of destruction, one home remained standing: Rahab's house. The scarlet cord still hung from her window, untouched by the devastation around it. The promise had been kept. And soon, the very men she had saved came through the ruins, not as spies this time, but as deliverers. They led Rahab and her family out of the ruins of Jericho, out of their past, and into a new future. She had been saved, not because of her status, her deeds, or her city, but because she had placed her trust in the one true God. But Rahab's story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The city of Jericho lay in ruins. Smoke curled into the sky, and the scent of burning wood and crumbled stone filled the air. The walls that once seemed indestructible were now nothing more than scattered rubble. The cries of the fallen had faded, replaced by the triumphant shouts of the Israelites. The victory was complete. Rahab looked around at her mother, her father, her brothers, and sisters. They were alive, alive because of her faith, alive because she had trusted in a God she had only heard about. Without hesitation, she led them forward, stepping away from the ashes of the past and toward a future she could hardly comprehend. The Israelites welcomed Rahab and her family, but their survival came with uncertainty. Where would they go? How would they be treated? After all, they were foreigners, Canaanites, former enemies of Israel. The people of Jericho had been condemned to destruction, yet here she stood, a living testimony of God's mercy. For days, she and her family lived outside the camp, separate from the Israelites. They were alive, but they were still outsiders. Rahab must have wondered, have I truly been saved? Or am I just a stranger among God's people? But God had already determined her destiny. Rahab had done more than just survive. She had been chosen. Her faith had set her apart, and soon she was fully accepted among the Israelites. No longer a foreigner, no longer an outcast, but one of them. And then, something even more unexpected happened. Rahab, the woman once known only as a harlot, caught the attention of a man named Salmon, an Israelite from the tribe of Judah. Their story is not detailed in the pages of Scripture, but what we do know is Salmon saw something in Rahab that went beyond her past. He saw a woman of courage, a woman of faith, a woman whose trust in God had saved not only herself, but her entire family. And so, Rahab the Canaanite became Rahab, a wife of Israel. But that wasn't all. She would also become a mother. What she didn't know yet, what no one could have imagined, was that her decision to trust in God that fateful day in Jericho would ripple through generations. Because Rahab wasn't just rescued, she was woven into the very lineage of the Messiah. But that part of her story was yet to come. Rahab had once been a woman marked by shame, a Canaanite prostitute living in the walls of a doomed city. But God had rewritten her story. She was no longer Rahab the harlot. She was Rahab, a woman of faith, a woman redeemed, a woman with a new purpose. As she settled into life among the Israelites, she must have marveled at how much had changed. She was once an enemy, but now she walked among God's chosen people. Her family, once destined to perish with Jericho, was alive and thriving because of her faith. The child she gave birth to was one who would bring forth a blessed lineage. His name was Boaz. Yes, the same Boaz who would one day show kindness to another foreign woman, Ruth the Moabite. The same Boaz who would become the great-grandfather of King David, the man after God's own heart. Rahab's blood ran through the veins of Israel's greatest king. But even more than that, her faith ran through the veins of the Messiah. Generations later, from the lineage of Rahab, from the line of David, came Jesus Christ. Think about that. A former prostitute became part of the family tree of the Son of God. If that's not redemption, what is? Rahab's story is more than just a tale of survival. It's a story of transformation, of faith, and of God's overwhelming grace. It's a reminder that God doesn't define us by our past. He defines us by our faith. No matter where you come from, no matter what labels the world has placed on you, God can rewrite your story. He can take an outcast and make them part of His eternal plan. He can take what was broken and make it beautiful. Rahab's faith saved her family, positioned her for a new life, and secured her a place in history. And through her, the promise of salvation came to the whole world. Her story asks us one simple but powerful question. What could God do with your faith? If Rahab, a woman once trapped in sin, could become part of the lineage of Christ, imagine what God can do with you. Rahab's story is one of the most powerful testimonies in the Bible. It shows us that God doesn't see us for our past. He sees us for our faith. If you were inspired by this powerful story of redemption, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more amazing Bible stories that reveal the depths of God's love and purpose. And remember, no one is too far gone for God's grace.
Shalom, brothers and sisters. Did you know we have an online store? It's called theroyalremnant.com. We have a variety of clothing and home decor items. Explore our sweatshirts. We have a few different designs and multiple color options. Or navigate to our home decor section and check out our candle designs. We have candles that read Shalom and some that read All Praises to the Most High. If you don't see something you love at the moment, sign up for our email list to learn of new items. Grab your free Bible story coloring pages, and your email will be added to our list. Thank you for your support. It encourages us to keep making content and merchandise to boldly share our faith. Shalom.